welcome to another episode of the Virtual Reality Reconstructionist, the premier podcast for exploring cutting-edge technology in forensics, investigation, and virtual reality. I'm your host, Roger Ryan Ryder, owner of Triple R Investigation. Today, we're diving deep into the world of forensic technology with our guest, Derik White, Director of Public Safety at FireZone. Derik's a pioneer in the CAD and forensic software world, having embarked on the journey back in 1986. His career began with CAD Easy, a company he started with his father, James White. Eventually, he co-founded the CAD Zone in Beaverton, Oregon, with his partner, Janice. This venture paved the way for accessible CAD solutions in public safety. His expertise was further recognized when FireZone Technologies acquired CAD Zone in 2014, leading to the development of what is now known as FireZone. Derik has been a key figure in FireZone spearheading the advancement of public safety software. In his free time, Derik finds solace and inspiration in playing the guitar, a hobby that he believes enhances his creative ability. Let's get into the interview, shall we? Derik, just to get started, can you share with us your journey with CAD Easy? I think is where you started with your father, and then leading up to public safety and FireZone, and how you got to their division in your career.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I mean, I've been in the CAD business my entire career, and it started out back in 86. But before 86, probably 84, my dad was showing me a program he was using called AutoCAD, which had just come out. He was probably using the beta version of it, right? He had seen it. He was an engineer. He was a mechanical and electronics engineer, and he was always drafting. And so he was using that. And I remember looking at that back then and going, it was pretty mind-boggling, right? That you could do drafting on a computer. And so obviously it dates me, but the cool thing is in 86, he said, hey, I'm going to move to Portland, Oregon. And that's where I was living at the time. He goes, you want to start a CAD business based on that stuff I was showing you? And I was in the middle of a couple of things I was doing. And I thought, you know what, I'll do it. I saved up some money and we started a business together. And back in those days, you had to build your computers and you had to get the CAD programs. We were using AutoCAD and generic CAD at the time. You taught yourself. Okay. And we found there was a business in selling computers to people and teaching them how to use CAD. So that's how it started in 86. And it didn't take me long of just pretty much 24/7 doing CAD work, figuring things out, doing work for other companies, and finally deciding we were going to start creating symbol libraries for electronic architectural symbol libraries, because those were in short supply back in those days. And we were selling these symbol libraries and these different classes of libraries to a company called Generic Software up in Washington. And as that progressed, the program got strong, more powerful, and they had a programming language in it. And I started getting into it and realizing, wow, I'm going to simplify this, because as I was training engineers how to use CAD, I realized even after 5 full days of training, they just weren't quite catching on. And I thought, well, I'm not a very good teacher. It's your first thought. And I realized they're just getting too much information and they're not really getting focused on their workflow. And so I started designing the menus, and I came up with a menu design that I pretty much could teach anybody to use CAD in about 4 hours. And then they could build up off of that. And then I designed what I called basic home building product. And it became part of a home series that Generic CAD sold, that AutoCAD eventually sold. So I would say I was the first to market home series where you designed your own home or your landscape, kitchen, bathroom, or office. And kept coming up with this menu system and this ability to simplify tasks. Well, in 1990, I set off on my own and I founded the CAD Zone. That was CAD Easy, by the way. And I founded the CAD Zone. And you'll notice if you look at the logo of the old company, it's got that Twilight Zone look. I was very much influenced by Star Trek and Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, right?
Awesome.
And yeah, so I kind of adopted that, a different world now. But back then, our influences were from the television shows, the books, the movies we read, and stuff we learned. And so that was always fascinating to me. And a lot of things just kept my imagination peaked. So my wife at the time, Janice, started that company. So I was really just doing any kind of work I could find. The Portland Fire Bureau came to my door one day and they said, "Hey, we heard you wrote a book on CAD, and we talked to this company in Washington that said you'd know how to train us." And they had a stack of diagrams and they put them in front of me, and they were actually using generic CAD to make pre-fire plan diagrams. And I started sifting through it, and they were going, "Yeah, we're learning to use it, but it's hard to teach everybody." And I'm looking at it, and it didn't take me long to realize there was some kind of regularity to their diagrams. Similar symbols, similar layouts, similar few other things, right? And I said, "Give me some time. I could build a program that would make it really easy to teach your guys this, and it would be very much dedicated to you." Well, the best move I ever made, I think, because we carry on this workflow idea to this day, is Janice and I decided we wanted to do this, but we wanted to really get in the minds of a fireman. So we spent time with firemen. We would go to the station, we would eat with them, we would go on calls with them. I've actually thrown on turnout gear and caught a truck leaving the garage. You could do that back in those days without getting in too much trouble. And so it took 6 months to build FireZone, the first program that we did at CADZone, we would sell nationally. And the funny thing was, we came up with this product, and it took us all that time because we wanted it to be just right for them. We made $2,600 for that 6 months with Portland Fire Bureau at the time because we weren't think it was a different idea, right? And when we got it done, the Captain Ken Burdett, who helped us start this, came to our office one day and he said, "You guys should really sell this nationally. Every fire department needs to do this." We didn't have internet at the time, right? So we didn't know a lot about it. And I actually wasn't quite sure. Is this the right thing to do? Even though it makes sense now. And Janice said, "No, we are absolutely need to do that." I'm going to admit to something. I'm the CAD zone guy. We created the fire zone, insurance zone, crime zone, crash zone, and now we're FireZone. And I go, "What do we name this thing?" And he looked at me and he goes, "You dummy. It's going to be the Fire Zone." And I remember laughing. We laughed so hard because to this day, if I ever talk to Ken, he always reminds me he came up with the name and that started that. So I think I'm very clever, but I'm really irritated that that wasn't my idea. So long story short, we bootstrapped our business and it moved into crash reconstruction. And we learned a lot about crash reconstructions from our customers. And we would go to trade shows. That's how we got noticed, and we'd get in magazines. And we got into insurance, fire, pre-fire planning, post-incident planning, loss control insurance diagramming, and then crime and crash scene diagramming. And we started getting into being data agnostic. I'll show you a little more of that in the evolution here. Then when we finally got into the point cloud side of things, we developed some really great tools for working in the point cloud. And in 2014, we were acquired by Faro Technologies. And soon after, Eris, which was my competitor at the time, got acquired by Faro. So you can see that was a lot of fun. So we had two distinct products. We had CADZone, which was the crime zone, crash zone, fire zone products. And then we had the Eris reality product. And Eris really had the knack of having that gamification to it. It looked like a game. It looked really cool, good graphics, good grips for doing things, but it lacked what the CAD zone products had, which was more of the CAD-esque accuracy, precision. And I think we had a better layout, but you couldn't deny there was split audiences. One wanted one or one wanted the other. So I was put in charge of the two groups, and I brought the two groups together and we formed a bond, and we had two choices. We keep moving forward at Faro with CAD zone products or Eris products, or we develop something from scratch. Well, I knew we were never going to grow and continue the legacy of either product if we didn't start from scratch. And luckily, I have the best team of developers. They're all specialists in their own right. And one of our guys, Paul, who was with Eris, had built multiple engines And so we created FireZone, which was the amalgamation of the two products, but we started from scratch and we tried to take the best of both and then get even better.
You got a great point there. I'm really excited that y'all, decided to start over. A lot of folks don't do that. Instead of let's just sit here and figure out what makes them better. And it really shows today the software is really competitive. It's user friendly. It's getting us into an area where law enforcement changed in my 20 plus years. That we went from gathering evidence to actually showing speeds, to actually showing diagrams, to videos. It grew tremendously to becoming an expert, to take it all the way to court.
Right.
Before it was, we could tell you what happened on the scene and give you evidence, but all the details were usually from an engineer or somebody in the field been doing it for a long time. Using FireZone, and actually it was Crashstone, but being able to use that and understand not just what I was doing better, but be able to explain to somebody who had no clue what we're talking about with the numbers, and actually explaining it to them with some visuals. And they were like, oh, yeah, I understand that.
Appreciate that. And you were a client of mine for years and worked with our product and then FireZone later. And when Janice and I started that business, we were a mom and pop business. We bootstrapped ourselves up into upwards of 7 or 8 people working for us at one time, maybe even more. But still, it's hard to keep up with the times and keep growing because technology kept changing so fast. And we knew we wanted to do more. And this gave us the opportunity. Being part of Faro was great because it gave us the resources to move forward. And they gave me a lot of leash, a lot of line to go do what I thought was right. They decided I was the expert and they were going to let me do what I thought I needed to do. And with me and my team, I will tell you, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. So I'm out front, I'm leading the team, but these guys are just amazing. And I can't tell you how it made my career. I've been so happy going forward because I didn't want my legacy to end. I wasn't looking to make a business to sell a business. I looked to make a business to do exactly what I love doing every day and to raise my family and have a good life and to work with the people I love. I've never been a fireman or a policeman, but I really have such high respect for that industry. And Janice and I both wanted to help as much as we could by doing things we were good at and focusing in this area. And it really gave us something to latch onto. But, with that being said, here we are today. And I was going to say, on top of what you were saying, it's one thing to do all the calculations and talk about what happened, but nowadays the big flash in the pan for people that don't know, right, is, we have these devices that they can use photos and LiDAR and scan, and you get this 3D model and you can look around in it and it can almost convince people that's all they need. But nothing has changed, Ryan, in the last 35 years or whatever. You still need a diagram. You still need 2D. I will tell you, 2D is king, 3D is the queen. You always have to end up giving somebody something on a piece of paper or something they can view in 2D. And doesn't mean the 3D isn't highly important, but we still have to have a diagram, and you still need some software that allows you to do some analysis. You have to be able to measure. You have to be able to look at point of views. You have to make some decisions from that work. And nowadays we are there. We can do it, but you still need a product like FireZone to be able to really get the most out of the data, right? You certainly could do your quick crash reports or a quick pre-fire plan, but you also might need to have a 3D point cloud and do bullet trajectory analysis and see where a bullet potentially came from, or blood spatter analysis, or crash analysis. I mean, we do all of that. And I think that is super important to validate what really happened.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I know y'all were in different aspects and they were all segmented. Now it's all focused on one, where regardless of what you're trying to accomplish in 3D, you can go to FireZone 3D and do it with a crash or fire or animation.
Right.
Let's focus on that FireZone 3D, which is 3D and expert now, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And explain to the audience, what kind of tools do you have for the crash and forensic technicians that work out in the field?
Yeah, no, I will certainly do that. So
Okay.
really, we always have to think about everything, right? We have to think about what is the solution for our customers, and it's data to delivery is what I would call the overall workflow. Okay. So where does that data come from? Right? It came from hand measurements, and it still could. Total station was the next big thing. Scan data, photo data, photogram data from photogrammetry, EDR data now. So your people out in the crash field we're pulling data out of the black boxes out of these cars, and we're able to insert that into Zone and create animations from it. So you can recreate what happened based on the recorded data in the car. And that's something that's coming out, Ryan, that, we've had this EDR tool in Zone for a few years now. We're going to be releasing something in a few weeks where it makes it easy just to automatically pull the data off the page from the PDF of the report and put it in there. We're going to be showing that. So processing that data, creating the data preparation. But once you have that data and you've got it into the Zone and maybe you processed it in our photogrammetry tool to turn photos into a point cloud, or you have hand measurements or whatever, you get that data in there. What are you going to do with it? Well, you can draw, you can do 2D and 3D diagramming if you want to make a drawing for a printout. You can annotations big, right? Text, dimensions, placards, labels, and then of course analysis. And we have we have tools in Zone for doing critical speed analysis just by clicking on a curve that you traced over from data you collected in the field, or doing momentum analysis, speed from crush analysis. And we're currently working on our unique volumetric crush tool that's going to be out soon. You're going to want to see. And of course, your standard dimensioning or just point of view analysis. Look at what did things look like? Where a witness said they were standing? Could they have seen something happen from that position? Well, in the past, you had to draw everything in 3D to do a point of view, put trees and buildings in based on measurements. Well, with point clouds, scanning data and having 3D point clouds, you're essentially generating the entire 3D environment so you can see whether someone could see through a wall or not, right? And then it goes to the next level. Well, we've done all this reconstruction work. Why don't we create an animation? And we can animate vehicles, bodies, do collisions, synchronize collisions. Do bullet animations. And we've even now have a tool called Mass Zone, which is really, it's a prediction modeling tool. Now we call it prediction. There's simulation and prediction. We're using the same physics formulas, but we're going to say prediction so we don't fall under that simulation guideline, because we can set our animations up based on your evidence. And then you can just tell that animation essentially by clicking on the cars and adding them to the Mass Zone universe and say, hey, what would happen in this same animation once you hit? And once those two vehicles hit and collide, they will then start following the laws of physics based on our formulas, and they will create crush damage, rotational damage, and directional damage. So you can see, does your animation based on evidence look close to what is being predicted? And did you put enough data in the prediction model? And I'll show a little bit of that later. And then most important, people shouldn't forget, you could do all this stuff. How the hell are you going to deliver it? You could print it out on a piece of paper. You could save images to a PDF. You can take snapshots. We have a ton of reports you can make from your analysis, automatically create, which is really cool. You can make movies from the animations. You can do fly-through movies. And we have Zone to Go, which will pack all this stuff up and create it in such a way you can share it with somebody where they can kind of move around the diagram and look at attached data. And then I'll show effective reality in a minute, and then we could do more reports. We even have a report center. So I know I don't want to go through all of that, but that's the whole thing. Where's the data coming from? Everything from you measuring by hand to taking photos and doing photogrammetry to the EDR, drones, and laser scanners. So you want me to talk about, we kind of talked about this, inputting the universal workflow, where that data comes from, processing it. I kind of said all that already. And, but I'm talking about workflows a lot because I'm going to show you what our thought process is. FireZone is considered the leading diagramming software for public safety in the market. And I appreciate that. And I think it's due to the work we do to make these complex things easier to use, visually more appealing, and more accessible to anybody that's taught how to use the program or wants to learn how to use the program. The thing is, like you just said, Ryan, you were doing all these things in one program. So it's not a one-trick pony, right? So if you just step into the program new, what are you doing? Like, what's your workflow? What do you know? So what we try to do is we try to talk to somebody like, what is it you're doing? Well, I want to get this point cloud data and I need all that 3D data, but we might not do all the analysis for Corp for some time, but we always have to generate a report. So I would say the prime workflow in 3D Expert would be you somehow get this point cloud data, whether it's from our scanner or a scanner data or photogrammetry, creating a point cloud, or however you get that 3D data. We can take that data into the program, put a clipping box on it to get to what we want to show of the data, like take the roof off of a building or just show the certain part of roadway, and make an ortho image. And that ortho image means it's a top-down orthographic image. It's to real-world scale. It's all the resolution of the point cloud. And the nice thing about that is it's called Zone 3D Expert, but it has a 2D component to it. You can go right into the 2D window. You go in with that ortho image, and you do your 2D diagram, and you annotate. Put your maybe line work, dimensions, labels, placards, etc., and you generate a report. Now you have a report done quickly. And why 2D? Well, 2D is it's a lot easier as far as doing quick work in it for the casual user. Because in 3D, I'm not saying our 3D is hard, but 3D is 3D. You have to get more comfortable at navigating in 3D with your mouse, which we have great tools for that, but you still are moving around in 3D and it adds another level of complexity to it. So I could show the program. Here we are in 3D, and I'll go to the environment and the ground plane, and I'll just turn on the grid so you can kind of see that. And there's a point cloud in 3D and pretty easy to navigate in with the mouse wheel. There's actually a model on top of that, highlighting that scan image of a model. This is actually data that was brought in from a drone data. And what we did was, like, here I've got this glowing line just to make it stand out that I just drew a line. See, I can just start drawing right on that 3D world right there. I'm attaching to it, right? I can go grab models and symbols, and 3D ones would be preferable here. Grab a 3D model and pop it on the scene. All these things we've made very easy. If I want to animate that, I can animate that, and it'll follow along that entire 3D point cloud. So it's just, you can just keep getting into more detail and more detail. But the thing is, if I just had this point cloud here, well, what data can I get from that right now? Well, I could put this big curved line in there, click on that curve, go into the power tools and say, well, I want to do a profile of this. Okay, well, there's my profile. I'll make it thicker so you can see it. There's the profile. I can tell it I want to be a distance or profile. Doesn't matter really. And we'll make that 100. You see this grid just changed, and I'll make the text a little bigger so you can start to see what's going on here. See, there's the total travel distance. Elevation's 36.62 feet from the lowest point. And I can show a report box so we can get that basic data in there. And we can even give it a title, Brian Ryder show. And then I can place that into here. And if you look, it just gives me this 2D profile thing, but at least it's something you could use to put something on. Like, somebody will come in here and they'll put a 2D symbol on here of a car sideways and go the old 2D route to say, yeah, this is where they don't have visual. It's stuff we've done for years. I like to get like a side view of a car, pop it on there. It's all real world scale. That's the next thing, right? So there's the car, and you could say, well, if you had a line in here, visually. He might be able to see here, and you could just kind of play around with that and show off everything that you want to show off. But being in 3D, it's fun. I'll click on that whole profile thing and just say, I'm going to roll it 90 degrees. Look, I just rolled a 2D image 90 degrees. I can move that wherever I want, move that in the drawing. It's just demonstrable stuff. And then you can come in here and move that out of the way. You can put labels in here. So if I was trying to show that this was important, that this cone was here and it's in 3, it's hard to see that. I can just click on it and I can go to tools and say billboard there. I just drew a line up in the air. You can't tell because that's round. So let me go to the car, right click, say billboard that. Watch this. No matter how I rotate, it's always facing me. And there's actually a lot of controls for the billboard tool. I can edit the post size. I can make it so it's not always facing and explode it. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. But that's kind of the idea, is how quickly can I label in 3D to show what I want to show if I do a fly through, because not everybody can see all that detail. So annotation and then doing reports, and I was going to show you that kind of thing. So did you have questions on that? I'll get lost in the pro.
Yeah, no, it's a great visual. So without the visual effects, you basically got a roadway with an intersection, but
Yes.
it's got a hill to it. So what you're being able to do is show that in 2D and 3D that there's a visibility issue. It's hard to see that person coming out into that roadway.
Yeah.
And you end up with a crash. So that's a great example of what it's doing for the crash industry, because that's one. Being in Texas, I don't get a lot of hills like that, but I know I've used it and it makes sense to people when they see an animation like that and it's speed oriented, right?
Yes.
So
of course.
people don't understand. You're in a 45-mile-an-hour roadway, so he's going twice the speed.
Yep.
They're up in the 90s. People don't register that really fast, and they get there really quick. But with the FireZone, you can show the true speed and show how quick that closing rate is for somebody that just can't quite grasp that, right? So you don't expect somebody to be going 90 miles an hour. And we have a lot of crashes, death investigations that they end up that way, unfortunately, because people don't expect them to be going that fast when they pull out in front of them.
Yeah, no, and it's like the scenarios you can show, and even like just pulling a body in and then telling it, I want that body walking steady, and it's going, the body, he's walking, let's say 3 miles an hour, just to make him, when you hit play. So you got that body, like you said, and you've got that. Then you say, well, like you said, this is a 35 mile an hour road. It's got a barrier in front of it. And you get some knucklehead that's, whoops, we're not allowed to say knucklehead, are we? But you get somebody that's
accurate.
Yeah, exactly. Tearing up the road here, and they're not paying attention. And you can tell, maybe you saw that there was a scuff mark or a skid mark, or they saw it at the last minute and they tried to get out of the way here, and then they went off the road. And I can click on that car, and I could have done it while I was placing it. If I click on that, like you said, we have these tools, right? Look at that car's going 30. Well, maybe he's going 56 and we just keep maybe 56, and we can set the speed to whatever we want, and then keep it at, maybe he slows down when he stops. So I can run that animation, and you can see that car going up there. Oh, and he sees that guy, and maybe, it would be, this guy was down here a little faster. I don't know, like that. But once he saw that guy, he kind of lost control here. But I'm just fooling around, right? And then messing around. But it's easy to nudge these things and get everything the way you want it. We talk about looking at this in 3D. You're still looking at a lot. There's a lot of information going on here. So sometimes you just need to show somebody, that's what it looks like in 2D. But it was here to here to here. But now we don't have our point cloud in 2D. So some people want to see that point cloud in 2D, right? So I would just go in here, and I go to my point cloud tools, and it should be processing it. Sometimes there we go. So it just went through and took that and it took images that are high resolution. It made ortho image out of it for 2D. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide this guy so I don't see that clipping box anymore. And everything looks normal. You don't see anything till I go into 2D.
Nice.
There you go. I
Yeah.
have this high res. Look at that. Look how good that is too, really. So you can just, so if you wanted to come in here and just work off of this and say, even though I did all this in 3D, I can still come in here and adjust that, move that thing around, move that stuff around, all that stuff. That was that other image. You can hide layers, but you still see your thing in here, this guy here, and you can go in there and do a print. You could save a PDF out of that, go to landscape, might look better. You could add a form, whereas our tools, go to my forms, and maybe you have this like rectangular form where you put your case number in, but I just grabbed the simple form. If you go to forms, there's a ton of different police type forms in here. Plus you can make your own. And when you make these, you make it so they will fit around. Like if I pick this form here, watch, it fits this big form in here, but you only have that much room for the diagram. So I'll do a form in here. Like I like this because it's landscape. So I'm gonna do that form. But what if I only wanted to see that part of the diagram in there? And we go even further. We do what's called, I didn't put a bunch of layers on here, but if you open up our layer manager, there's 4 different layers. I can print a report based on layers where I have 5 pages, breaks it all apart. So that's, we always think deliverables is very important. And so far, so much so that we've gone as far as adding our report center it's object based. It knows it looks at the drawing and it says, what do you have in this drawing? Well, you could print the scene. You could print a lower high resolution snapshot in 3D or a top down snapshot, print the layer report, profile. There's the profile, right? So it knows you have those things in here. And so if you click on them, like, let me do a animation report, hit create report, it'll find an animation and it'll generate based on the speeds, your acceleration report. But I didn't change mine. So it helps you find those things if you don't know where they are. There's a bullet trajectory, crush damage, and blood spatter all in this point cloud. Right? All these things are in there. And there's and you got all that stuff in there. So really, really compelling, right? You do all that work and you want to get these reports. It makes it easy to do it. And just to go back, I'm jumping around a little bit, but I want to go back to the concept of workflows. Performance and proficiency are important. And we actually have some really cool tools. If you set up legends or things, you can match and clone stuff very quickly. We also have a favorites toolbar. It has all the common things you want for, let's say, annotating or analyzing a point cloud. Like here, I just did a slope calculation and I put all the tools I like in here. Right. So, and that's easy to do. You pick any tool you want to use, right click on it and add it to favorites. And you can, this is called a point cloud tool, but you can save whichever one you want and have the most common symbols and models and tool. Like there's your scale bar. People always want a north arrow on a scale bar. Why go look for it? I just put it in this speed bar, right? So that's pretty neat. And this is the next thing coming out, Ryan, that you haven't seen. We're building, that's the second part of the workflow system. The workflow center lets you pick, what workflow am I doing? Well, if you were trained to do a 2D crash report, this list will pop up and say, place a satellite image. You don't even have to go find the satellite image in the ribbon. Just click on it right here. And this list will stay up. You can print the list out, or you can go watch a movie of what that workflow looks like. This takes you through what I call a complex workflow, all the way from a satellite image or using a smart road or both to printing out, saving your work, printing it out to a form, or opening up that workflow. And what that means is you might come in here and say, well, I want to do and this looks ugly, by the way, because this is in development, but I want to open up that crash report, right? And that tells me, I've already been taught how to do this, but let's say I haven't done it for a couple of weeks or a month. I go, oh yeah, I got to place my satellite image. Okay, I know it's on the home menu. It's right here. But you're going to say, well, I don't want this list. Okay, print the list out and look at it on paper. Here's my layer manager. Here's my bubble label text. There's my scale bar, and I'm going to go to my symbols. I always need my north arrow. You get the idea. I even like to save my own legends in here, what I call a little legend. These are the line types, let's say, I'm always using. If I want to draw a line and I want to turn that line into a railroad track, really easy to do. I come down here and I go, oh, turn it into a railroad track. Or I want it to be more of a simplified railroad track like that, right? But then I change its size or aspect to fit my drawings. Well, once I've done all this changing, I want to go place it again. How do I repeat it in the next drawing? Well, just save what you want in a little box. It's a little drawing of all the things you use for line types. Guess what? Double click on it. Start drawing. Double click on that. Now I don't have to remember how I keep creating, or I like this crosswalk here. Here's the kind of text I like. If I want this text with drop shadow and then change that to Main Street because it looks really good on a filled area. So you see how I went and did all that without actually having to go restart all over and do it again.
Well,
Here's the different dimensions I like to use. Oh, I like this guy, match him. There's that dimension. Or I'm going to match him and get that dimension, right? We have all these like tools for going in there and doing these things. So matching and cloning stuff will speed up people's time and cut their time in half. We actually spend a lot of time at this company working together to try to tell the same story. And so that keeps improving. I won't tell you everything's perfect because it's not. It's getting there though. And this is the kind of way you're going to see that we are all telling the story, training the same things and helping people get through all that.
well, very true. And a lot of great information there. I like that. Obviously, you're listening to your customers and building on that as you go, not just building a system. I like that.
And we are definitely voice of customer. I became an expert in this field because of the experts in your field. The thing is, you or your peers in your group don't always know what is a good tool, right? Like, in other words, you could tell me this is what I do, but you couldn't tell me how to design the program to do something because you might not know what we can do. Our job is to have some imagination and creativity to create tools that help you do what you want. Our work is successful if you see us do something that makes perfect sense to you or is obvious. Like you could see the reason behind the favorites toolbar. No one told us how to build the animation. They just said, can you animate? We have to try to come up with a way that everybody can manage it, figure out how to use it. So
I know you're doing a great job. How long has the profile
tool
been in
been, gosh, I think I put the profile tool in Crash Zone 15 years ago, maybe.
there?
I can't remember.
That's about right because it was fairly new, but we had a gas tanker roll over full of gas and explode. And one of the keys there was the ditch that he went into caught all his tires. But by the time the fluid transferred to the other side of the trailer, it flipped him. So the whole thing there was showing that profile of that ditch and how deep it was, quick it happened with just that one little single profile, and showing it was incredible because people could look at that and go, "Ooh, I can understand that." Because even with pictures, you can't see that little dip with a full 18-wheeler.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can see it's a drainage ditch and it's not very deep, but it was deep enough to get the tires down lower. And then once that gas transferred, it flipped the truck. So great tool there. I'm using FireZone at the police academy now. So when I teach crash investigations, all my scenarios, we go out and I basically put cars there and say, here's the crash, and explain it to them, and they have to work it, right?
Yeah.
When we get back from class, I actually create a video with FireZone to show them what we just described out there. First couple of times, their brain starts clicking in and how did that happen? And very was good because the other side of that was if you ever get any bad weather, we can't go out there. I can recreate those scenes off the videos from FireZone that I've recreated. Those incidents off the roadway, just like what you're doing, identical to at the academy, like they would be out there, but they stay dry in the classroom. So fantastic tools, a lot of different applications. And I know forensic wise, the shot trajectory is a big asset. I just went to talk to some guys in San Marcos where they had officer involved shooting.
The bullet trajectory tool,
yeah.
Right?
And it was in a hallway, like a 6-foot hallway. It was kind of, obviously you could tell we're pretty confined space, but they had the scan. They like, how do we use this to show what happened and show other officers what happened because they did a really good job. So I helped them with
Oh, that's
the
cool.
FireZone to show how to do those trajectories, where the shots came from, how they matched up with the statements. You could tell they were shooting and trying to obtain cover and that kind of stuff. So it was very good visuals with the trajectory cones and understanding that. And they're like, man, this is so
That's
they got
cool.
to do that before they had to do a whodunit kind of shooting incident.
Exactly.
You
Well,
know, so
and and you could rule out a lot. Like you said, if you scan the scene, especially, you can keep revisiting it over and over again, right? But it's pretty amazing. And I remember at IPTM Special Problems, this guy came in with was a Leica or Sokia scanner, one of the first one I'd ever seen. It looked like a big fat total station, and it was $250,000.
oh my.
And he'd created a point cloud with it and showed us it was horrible. Like, it was this big, ugly mess of points. And he goes, "This is going to be the next thing in public safety." And I looked at him and I said, at $250,000 with millions of points, it's not going to cut it, because our computers won't be able to handle it.
Yeah.
That many computer won't be able to handle over 10. The CAD program couldn't handle more than 10 million points. And I looked at it and I thought, you always know that stuff's going to get cheaper and faster and all that stuff. And of course it evolved. But once it started getting to the point where I was seeing point clouds, we started building tools. I thought, well, what good is it having all these points? How do I draw on them quick? And how do I cut them out? And we really got into that. But you would ask me, really, what was the evolution from the beginning to now? And that's a fun question for me, because I still literally remember working on dial-up phones and no internet. I hate to be that old, but we did have cable TV. So, but right, we were just seeing the beginnings of the internet, and everything just had to be on the phone and by mail and by magazine. And so sharing code and files and everything was by mail. It was crazy. But the funny thing is, we still do a lot of the same things. It's just that CAD in the beginning really was just diagramming, right? It was line art, geometry, lines, curves, arcs, circles, and the rest, along with dimension lines, arrows, and text. And that was pretty much it, right? CADD, computer aided design and drafting.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was going to tell you was, though, really, the only thing we could do to set ourselves apart, we did user interface, our special menus, ribbons, or left side menus, whatever verbiage we use that was industry specific. And I should say, and symbols. Symbols are what set us apart. Libraries of pre-drawn everything, bodies, cars, signs, to save anybody from having to draw that stuff.
Yeah.
That was the beginning, right? And then teaching workflows. And so you had a diagram with hand measurements and line. You could print it out, share hard copies. PDF came later. Okay, then PDF came and we could share PDFs. And I probably forgot something in here, but then we started creating special tools. We came up with Easy Lines, which was to make it easy for you to draw lines, auto fit forms, things like the profile tool. We just started building in programmatically things that would help you do your job, right? And ways to import hand measured data or total station data and turn it into a diagram really easily.
Stay tuned for part 2 as Derik shares stories about the challenges and breakthroughs in developing workflows and expert features of FireZone, like photo points and mass zone, bringing CAD to the forefront of forensic technology.